say hi.
Hey, welcome to Soul Star Live. I hope you're excited about viewing. Can't wait to see how many we get on here today. This is going to be fun. Make sure you check out RadioPhoenix.org, SoulStarLive.com, and there's a SoulMedia.org for more information about what we're doing right over here. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the show.
So you probably should be from that angle there.
This angle?
So that they're not
Boom.
looking at your back.
Got it right there.
So if you need to, push that chair out.
Yeah.
Push it out the way. So let's see if we can get, yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, it works for both of them now. That'll work.
Oh, well, they'll be able to see.
It's funny how that screen is picking up that camera, but that one isn't picking up that camera at all. It's dark. It just doesn't even make sense.
All right, so we need to connect. Oh, wait a minute. So what are we doing? We are
inviting.
Ooh, you can record in the cloud. I want to play with that. Okay, so how do we invite this person to the meeting?
Right there.
Okay. And then
which email do we send from?
Whoever was on here last. Last time, apparently, we sent it from Cheeseburger's email.
Oh, really? I seen his post. I follow him on Instagram.
Yeah, he started his show last night.
That's what he said. Yeah, he said his little post was up.
All right, what's your email?
It's going to be DAVIDA, DaVida C.
DAVA?
DAVIDAC.
Like cat?
Yeah. Okay. At healthyarizona.org.
Spell out Arizona or easy?
It's Healthy Arizona, yeah. Yeah, spell it out.
.org?
.org, yeah.
Okay, that just looks weird. But I'm going to minimize that. Okay. Oh, I haven't actually started this one yet. So this is Facebook. That's
okay.
YouTube.
Facebook, YouTube. Everybody, how y'all doing?
Okay, now it should be starting. Okay, now you're on Facebook.
Nice. That is the strangest thing in the world. Like, that's picking up that screen. That one picks up the screen, but this one is not picking up any screen. That is hilarious.
Okay.
It ain't got to do it. You ain't got to worry about it.
Oh, no, I'm worrying about them being able to see. Yeah. Chat.
Oh, yeah, them being able to see.
But if you turn it too much, it'll...
Oh, it power down?
Yeah, because if you move it a certain...
Sure.
That cord, it's not like the newer ones where it holds.
Oh.
I think that's one of the reasons why they designed those.
So the magnetic.
Yeah, because this is the 2012.
Okay.
Actually, I couldn't do the airdrop after you left.
Oh, really?
Because that's too old.
Oh, well, let's find a way to get it then. Let's find a way to make sure we get it all situated then.
So long it didn't even get to my favorite part where you start talking shit. We will not.
That's it.
We will not.
His whole album is that. Well, that album in particular, that one is like he's got a lot of stuff on there. Got some stuff from Alice Coltrane. She's speaking on one of his tracks. So.
I think I didn't even know that song was on there. What happened was I was driving somewhere on a long road trip, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, Kamasi," and that song started playing, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, I think was that one the Fighter, Street Fighter.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to let you just riff.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm gonna open up with. I got a couple things I'm gonna open up with. Get it worked out.
Okay. DAVIDA DA. Yeah. DaVida C at Healthy Arizona. Okay.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Soul Star Live. Yes, we're live from the basement of the Phoenix Center for the Arts, Radio Phoenix Studios. Welcome to Soul Star Live. I'm your host, Calvin Worthen. So excited about this show because this is a good time to be communicating. I'm hoping that everybody is ready to communicate, ready to show some patience and all that wonderfulness. I know I'm gonna give a shout out to all the homeschooling parents and working parents. The double time. I'm gonna give a big shout out to those parents that got little people in the house that's going to interrupt the Zoom meetings and say the questions and stuff that absolutely is inappropriate, and you got to do something about it. So big shout out to those parents who are at home trying to keep it all together in the midst of this craziness, man. So I'm saluting you today. Saluting you with your Cheerio stain on your shirt, and saluting you with the little wash rag that you got to be cleaning up everything all the time. I already know how it is. You got to stop with the whole situation. You don't want to spill the juice on your own computer. You don't want to do that. So big shout out to those parents, man. Now, this is a real struggle, man. And I'm glad that Soul Star Live is here to help out with giving y'all some shots. So I know it's a struggle out there. And it's the sad thing is, so I'm going to jump right into the sadness after my salute to the parents. The sad thing is, even though we have this situation with the COVID-19 coronavirus started in the year 19, that's just so much information. I just was like, what? So the COVID name is coronavirus 19, because we do the whole FOMOs and the LOLOs, and we broke it down for the people in this particular time period who can't spell or know how to read. We broke it down. It's COVID. It's two letters, 3 letters, and then the year 19, because the year came out. I was really surprised to hear that, seeing that it was on Lysol bottles before 2019. So if you got your questions, you can definitely give us a ring. Studio line 602-345-8823. We're taking some calls. If y'all got questions, we're gonna have good sister Davida Carr on. She's an epidemiologist. But before she gets on the show and gives us a little bit of information about all of this healthy information that we can get, I want to talk about what COVID-19 has not erased. It has not erased racism. Yes, not at all. Racism is still alive and well in the midst of a global pandemic all over the planet. People of color are suffering at the hands of different governments and different institutions. And one in particular, before we got our shutdown, before we got completely locked down, there was a brother who was jogging. He was just running. All he was doing was running, man. He was running, and 2 other gentlemen, a father and a son, thought that this brother who was running from a construction site and was taking stuff from there. I don't really know. He ain't had none in his hand. I guess maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But these gentlemen informed the police officers in their local police. The oldest gentleman used to be a police officer, and they chased this brother down in their car, and they confronted this young man, Mr. Ahmaud Arbery. And then something happened. Nobody's really completely clear about the whole situation, but the family of Ahmaud Arbery is suffering today because the son of the father, who was going out to play Batman and Robin with his son, he wanted to go and save the neighborhood from something. He shot and killed Mr. Arbery. Such a sad situation. Not only did that happen, but the whole case kind of went through this whole dance through the legislation and the courthouses of the great state of Georgia. Yes, I said it. It was Georgia. Georgia was there was filibustering and gerrymandering and passing the blame and the buck on to how we hold these gentlemen accountable for their actions. I believe the father, who was on the scene as well, was an officer, and then he, was friends with the everybody in could prosecute this without feeling like they had a conflict of interest. So it got passed and pushed and passed and pushed, and we still waiting. We're still waiting. So don't get killed in COVID-19 by COVID-19 or racist institutions and individuals. Saddens me deeply to say I want the best for this family and for the state of Georgia. I know that if I knew that there was a law on the books, on the statute, that allowed people to, upon their own judgment, accuse me and then sentence me to death, uh, I wouldn't be living there. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be able to make it. Georgia, I love Atlanta. I went to Atlanta before, and I love it. And I think it might be a wonderful place, haven for some folks with melanated skin and whatnot. It's a beautiful place. But the part that the rest of it, all the Georgia part, where they got these laws where essentially it's okay to hunt down people, especially people of color, and shoot them and kill them and hold them accountable for whatever crime that you saw fit that they were doing. Um, Man, it's sad. I thought COVID-19 was going to get racism too. I thought it was going to go ahead and be on some sort of surface. So racism is like walking down some hallway or something and leans up against the wall, like, yo, I'm really excited. I'm still out here killing all these people. But it didn't. COVID-19 did not save us. So sad to say. Very excited though to have our guest of honor on the show, Sister Davita Carr. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Soul Star Live. I'm making it. I'm making it. I'm trying to stay away from all the craziness. But I'm excited because I know we had a conversation earlier this week, and you had mentioned some things about how information was being given out about this disease and how the disparities and the numbers and the statistics sometimes they're being skewed. I wanted to make sure that my audience knew where to go to get all the good information. And I also wanted to hear from a Black epidemiologist. I mean, that's got to. So before we jump into the COVID-19, can you elaborate on that whole situation? Like, you are an epidemiologist, and what brought you to that? I know you are here in the Valley. Give us a little bit about yourself, sister. Okay. Oh, okay.
for communities of color is it gives you the data to say, no, I'm not making this up. This is literally using the methodology that is very common and very accepted and understood by larger mainstream organizations. This is what we're seeing. If we use what you use, this is what we find. So working through that and understanding all of that, I lived in Atlanta at the time. I was actually a teacher for science for several years. And I got bored. So I decided to go back to the grad school and thought public health is probably one of the main places I would go because of the combination of data and science and people. I don't know if you can tell that or not. I'm pretty much the most normal of science nerds you'll probably meet, and that's okay. I accept it. But it thereby having that interface with the community, I've learned over the years is incredibly critical. As I said, there's only a few of us, and part of what that does is that creates comfortability among communities when I step in the room, simply from me stepping in the room, which I definitely appreciate because in order to help people and to help communities get to a place where they feel like their quality of life and their health is at a state that they're comfortable with, they have to be comfortable enough to tell you this is what's going on. And oftentimes there's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of kind of apprehension and fear because there's so much difference in the way people are perceived, regardless of whether they intended or not. So that's a short story answer for a lot of years of just tracking people around and identifying different pockets of minority health. It doesn't always necessarily have to be people of color. I actually worked for the military for several years because the military, the DOD's Office of Surgeon General, I was there for about a year and a half, 2 years on a fellowship because military is actually about 10% of the population. So that actually qualifies as a minority population. It may not be a racial minority, but it definitely is a minority. And they do have a very different perspective and approach to healthcare than some other groups. And that becomes fascinating in a whole different way, not just from the way the federal government approaches them, but vice versa, what they expect from the federal government, or I should say what they should be expecting from the federal government that they often don't.
Well, we all know how that story goes. So you have a long history. Like mom was in this science and dealing with health. You're in the health industry, and I'm excited because number one, you got layers. So you ain't gonna be pulling nothing out of nowhere. You got layers. Mom gonna make sure everything is right. But also, you had mentioned something about the data because for us, especially for Black folks, it's hard to trust the data. It's hard to be able to look at some of this data and say, well, what was the angle of the person collecting the data? You know, sometimes we don't even know how to ask those questions. And I really appreciate your passion for data. that's one of those that's a unique skill.
It's a very learned skill. It's pretty straightforward. The same way that you look at, let's say, whenever a commercial comes on and you're like, okay, it looks all nice, right? And then you hear that footnote at the end of like, may cause death, dismemberment. You're like, wait a minute, what kind of, I just want to get clearer skin. Like, I'm not trying to die because I'm taking so-and-so. And those kinds of things that you listen to and you pay attention to, you end up learning. Those are ways that the pharmaceutical companies kind of cover themselves from any wonky, and that's a technical term, or outliers, what they really call it, outlier results, as well as, they want to, it's all about the angle, right? And about what is the overall purpose of the information that you're getting,
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, I'm excited to continue our conversation. We have to take a quick little break. And then we're going to be right back with Sister Davida Carr. Taxman got you down, but the Blau Company is here. 50 years, the Blau Company is focused on building meaningful, lasting relationships, ensuring clients understand all the complicated tax codes, services including accounting, tax preparation, consulting, and more for both businesses and individuals. The office is located at 1204 East Baseline Road, Suite 104 in Tempe. More information can be found at blau.com. It's blauco.com. There'll be more Soulstar Live right after this.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you check out the whole show, the audio show as well on radiophoenix.org. Go ahead and look at some of the archives. You want to check out the show. We've been going. This is season 5 for us. If you're interested in some more, you can binge watch it while you're chilling on your little quarantine situation. Soulstar Live. Up next. Let me do the membership. Membership on the other one.
The Womack.
Womack. Sign of the times. The late great Prince, formerly known as Rogers, all that good stuff. Welcome back, Soulstar Live. Sister Carr, look here. I want to jump right into it. This is what I want to jump into. I need to know, and my audience needs to know, there's a lot of information being said out now about the origins of it, or even if that's a necessary conversation, how this disease is working, or whether or not they know enough about it. I mean, a lot of the terminology seems like that people are vacillating back and forth. Is there a source, a place that people can go to maybe to read their own information, gather up some thoughts? What are the best resources for keeping us informed and updated about COVID-19?
Question. So in my mind, I always harken back to who are the people who do this for a living, right? Who are the people who, like me, pay student loans to do things like public health? Because yes, not your armchair epidemiologist, not that person. Oftentimes what I end up looking at the most, and again, I'm not affiliated with anybody, these are just the sources that I tend to look at to stay on top of things. One, I look at the CDC, because they have a whole page about COVID-19 and what to do if you have risk, what symptoms to look out for, things like that. I look at the World Health Organization as well. In fact, on Friday, Dr. Tedros, who's the Director General of the World Health Association, organization, I said, had a reporters press conference, and it was fascinating. Both him and the emergency planning group had a meeting, and they discussed where we were, how we are globally. People could ask questions. In fact, they are getting funding from a specialized portion of the World Bank in order to support research and investigations on the World Health Organization of COVID-19. I look at obviously the ADHS's COVID-19. That's gotten more complicated over time because they have now added more data, which is a good thing. But it does also make it a little more difficult to remember what you're looking at. And I'll get into that in a second. So usually CDC, World Health Organization, there's this fantastic global GIS map that Johns Hopkins University has had literally since January that tracks the number of cases across the entire world, and it has them listed by the number as by country. So, for instance, right now there's over 3.5 million cases across the world, and the U.S. is responsible for about a third of those currently. But you also have to remember there is a difference between being a case and being a mortality, and that's a whole other question that I'm sure we will get into. So those are usually the top three that I look at, and or four: World Health, CDC, ADHS, and the Johns Hopkins model is great. There's a fifth one that's more useful for planning. It's the one that the federal government and the state actually were using to try to figure out when we would hit our peak for utilization of hospital beds and all of those things in order to try and figure out how long we needed to socially distance and shelter at home. And that is through a University of Washington. That was pretty awesome, but again, it's a model, which means it's a predictive thing. They're trying to guess when the peak is going to be. And thereby, the less data you have, the more specific the guess is. So now, over time, now that we have more data, the more specific it has become.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have just a couple of things I want to make sure. ADHS, that's the Arizona Department of Health Services, so for our listeners. And then that the place to find, you said John Hopkins had the map, and then there was another place that was giving us the predictions, the Washington place. Yeah.
For health, measurement, and economics, I believe. And that's out of the University of Washington. And they have been doing a predictive map by state and across the country of this is how many days you're going to need to be sheltered in place in order to make sure that you don't overwhelm the hospitals, or in order to minimize the number of deaths you could have. This is how long you would have to do that. But there's always a catch to those. And the catch is the assumption that every state would initiate some kind of order like that around the same time, which did not happen.
They didn't do it. That's but so I got more questions. I got another quick break to take, and then we're gonna be right back with the Vita Carr, epidemiologist here in the Valley. Soul Star Live will be up next, right after the break.
There is fresh coffee, by the way.
Oh, thank you, man.
I never got a chance to get it.
She hear this? No. Oh, okay.
She's hearing what's coming through the board.
So I want to make sure.
This dog stays quiet and my kid stays asleep on my
I thought she was doing something.
Just don't choose that.
Like,
Like, into the baby.
oh man.
I'm more concerned about allergies right there.
Yeah. Man, right now it's supposed to be peace, and there ain't no peace right now. Folks are gonna be fighting and scared and getting scared in the motherland. That is the worst.
I mean, you could even see it out of the Arab parts of the world. And
No.
it just don't make sense for anybody other than million people that rule anything on that continent.
Oh, weird.
Actually, I've been studying up. I guess Rwanda is slowly becoming African one of Singapore.
Really?
They're trying to slowly like build up
Because of the war. And they had, anytime somebody goes in hard in the country, and Europeans is involved, they usually be like, I feel bad. Blowing up all your stuff. Let's make your stuff real nice. Let's make it the unbelievable city of the world.
That was the one where they went on each other. That's the one where they started to say each other.
Yeah, man. I couldn't even finish Hotel One.
Yeah,
I was like, I
watched it in pieces. I was
man.
like, oh. It ain't no different than what we doing over here. Each other. It was just beautiful place. All right.
Welcome back, Soul Star Live, living for the city. Mr. Stevie Wonder. So excited to be here on Soul Star Live and having a great conversation with epidemiologist Davida Carr. I love the word because it just rolls right off my tongue. I love saying it. It's when I practice that one. That's I used to have a desire to be somewhere in that health industry. And in my human anatomy class, I've done to make sure I got all of my medical terminology. I took all those tests to make sure I was good at it. So that's like my second language, medical terminology. But don't ask too much because, you get in, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to call somebody who's an expert. Because it was years ago I took that class. Welcome back, Soul Star Live. I have so many questions, and I don't know if I have enough time. I know we had heard the Commander-in-Chief mention something about injecting things, and then you had to retract that statement. That's cool. But I do have a question that I saw online. If soap can kill this virus, why do we need a vaccine?
Oh, that's a great question. So, most viruses, and all of those things, I used to teach microbiology, so this is right in that line
Yes.
too. I've had a lot of jobs. I'm part West Indian. That's probably why. Most viruses and pathogens, as we call them, bacteria, viruses, the like, will not be able to survive things that are soaked, meaning surfactants, things that will disrupt how they are shaped, and thereby that means they're not as effective. So it will kill them, right? But our bodies aren't made of soap, and most viruses and pathogens are literally designed to infect specific cells. So what you end up seeing is you need a vaccine in order to prepare your immune system for potentially needing this particular virus, much like you would influenza, like for the flu season, or any of the other vaccines that are out there. It's more about making sure that your immune system is prepared to see that kind of invasion, and being able to respond quick enough and without overwhelming the whole system, which is usually what ends up happening. If you have just a straight infection that is untreated and all of that, what usually is, it's not the virus that ends up getting you, it's all of the, what we call consequential and sequelae conditions, like the fever goes to a point where you can't tolerate it, breathing, things like that end up shutting down. It literally will shut down the system trying to get rid of this one thing. Almost like, you see a spider and then you decide, burn the whole house down. Probably not your best idea, but that's kind of what your immune system does. However, if you're like, this is a spider, it's a daddy long legs, this will not kill you, you're much less likely to burn your home down. And that's what a vaccine does. Is it basically shows your body it's daddy long legs. They are non-threatening. You just need to chew them out and keep it moving. As opposed to that's a black widow, get it out quick, kill it, and that kind of thing. So, but that's a great question.
Yeah. I know there was some, the conspiracy theorists were out and trying to dive into some of that. And I saw that how the surface cleaning or the hand cleaning or the orifices of the body, keeping those clean, that right there, they're using as protections from this particular virus. But it just seemed like if it was so weak that it could get destroyed by soap and hand sanitizer, how could it be so powerful? You just gave us some really good information. Thank you for that. So,
sorry.
Go ahead.
What you're mentioning is why we decided to have, I should say, why the recommendation is all the hand washing, and that's more. It's not so much about the virus killing it or killing it with hand washing. It's about minimizing the amount of bacteria and germs on you, so that you're less likely to transmit it to someone else. So if you're more frequently hand washing, even if you had touched something that had the virus, you would be less likely to infect yourself and others because of the hand washing.
So let me just make sure I clarify for all my listeners and myself. So this thing works like I got my hands touching some surface that may have had COVID-19 or any other virus on it. I rub my eyes, wipe my nose. I don't wash my hands and go get me some chicken or something. I eat the chicken. I got to go in on it. And all the while, I am subjecting myself to having this virus, bacteria, whatever, if I didn't wash my hands, whatever I was touching on has now entered the body.
My favorite analogy for hand washing was pretend that you just chopped up some jalapenos and you have to put your contacts in. Because when you cut up hot peppers and you've got that, what's called capsaicin, all over your hands, when you have not washed your hands fully, because it is bracing.
That was me. I've done that one before. I bought some habanero, and I ain't never seen them before. I wasn't really messing around with peppers, so I went to the new store. I saw how pretty they were. The prettiest little peppers I've seen. They some cute ones. Brought them home, got them in my hand, started trying to figure out what to do with them, what I wanted to put them in, and I took a little nibble of one. Oh, I'm telling you how, woo! And it was all on your hands, all of it, anytime you touch everything. So the idea is that we should have been practicing some sort of hygiene, cleansing since the very beginnings. Like when you come onto the planet, we should be implementing the practice of keep yourself clean, bacteria, all that information. How do we get it so the next people coming to the planet, they're going to learn something differently? They're going to get it scared me too. they're going to get a whole different explanation about how to live and be on this planet because of this virus. Those of us who are here before it and are more stubborn, how do we convince or how do we create the opportunity to share enough information with them to help people understand about that simplicity of it? Because if that was the issue for a lot of people I knew talking about it, they would talk about it, but they would say, well, how is it this strong and it can do all these things? Well, what can we do for those stubborn people who are on the planet before? How do we get them to realize hygiene is important?
That's a great one. I think it's more of, and the hard thing about our elders is that they have seen so much. And they're like, oh, this is not a big deal. If you live through polio and, all the like, this should not be a big deal to them. So the explanation that I give, because I have a parent who's a senior citizen, and I think she's a little more cognizant because that's the one that worked for the health department. But the question is, it's really about where you are in your life and how susceptible you are. Like, we would like to keep you around a little longer. So is this irritating? Yes, but we really need you to stay as safe as possible. because your immune system is not what it used to be, and the susceptibility is one part of it. The other aspect is all of your other aspects in terms of your chronic disease and things like that, that make you have a higher rate of infection and risk of mortality than others. And of course, there it is. So the idea is like more older Americans have chronic disease that cause a higher risk for mortality and hospitalization. Thereby, you want to protect them as much as possible. And part of that means you're going to have to go to the store for Graham. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get Pop his, his stuff, because I would rather you fuss at or, or why, I don't understand why I got to stay here. Yeah, well, you can cuss me out when I get back with your stuff. Now, do you just want the half and half and the butter, or do you want salt and butter, half and half, and eggs? Because I would rather you fuss at me than have to deal with the aspects of you going to the hospital, because then I can't even go in with you, because they're trying to minimize the amount of exposure for others. In fact, my mother's aunt, who was actually in her 90s, fell at home a couple of days ago, late last week, and they called the doctor. Everything was fine, because she kind of fell down on her behind. She fell over the cat. And the doctor said, "Okay, that's fine. The joy of telehealth. You got to ask her the questions, see how she was doing cognitively. She's okay." And then they called her daughter, who happens to be a nurse, who was like, "Oh no, you need to take her to the hospital." And I was like, "No, no. She is in her 90s. Like, that is not a good idea. Unless she absolutely has to go, I wouldn't recommend it, only because the risk of infection in a place where there's more people who have it, and I'm not just talking people who come in when they think they have symptoms. I'm talking about actual providers who have been there this whole time working that have been exposed and that kind of thing." So, yeah.
Well, we're gonna take one more break. We got one more section left. It's gonna be a short little break, but in this next section, I want you to tell me about New Zealand and their process, and would that have been something good for us here on this side? So more Soul Star Live with epidemiologist Davida Carr right after this. Oh yeah, we got to pay these bills too. The WOMAC programs are supported financially by the WOMAC Cocktail Lounge, 5749 North 7th Street in Phoenix. The WOMAC has dining, dancing, eclectic live bands, and playlists. Open from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. daily. WOMAC.us. WOMAC on Facebook and Instagram. There'll be more Soul Star Live right after this.
Okay.
Say it again. She gonna go get it. She gonna do something to that dog. We was on the meeting.
No, I was worried about the little boy.
Like which one? Which one? Which one is the worst? Yeah, right now. It's something else, man. Hope you're enjoying the show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check out all our archives. You can follow me on Instagram, Calvin J. Warner _ Big Calvin. Soul Star Live is also on Facebook. Soul Star Live. Got some good stuff on there. Check out SoulStarLive.com as well. SoulStarLive.com for archives. You can binge it because you ain't got nothing to do. You might as well learn something. It's good information. Seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4. 5, 2. You're all good. All together.
The other song was Terry Tobin.
Say it again.
The other song was Terry Tobin.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah. Welcome back. Soul Star Live on the Zoom with epidemiologists, giving us some good information. Right before the break of the last segment, I had this question marked and loaded. I was pondering. The first time I saw the news about New Zealand and all of the ridicule, I guess, initially that they had received for their method. I think they just locked down the elders and the babies, and then everybody else got to do whatever. And I believe the last time I looked, they had 2,000 deaths, but they have plateaued in all of their contact and the hospitals are back to a. Give us a little bit of information about how they were using this method, and if that's something that we could have done here.
Well, the first thing that the first thing that they did that was very good was that they proceeded to take their measures early, and that is the huge key. One of the things that Dr. Tedros and his group mentioned on Friday was that the idea that, the World Health Organization waited too long to tell people that this was a pandemic. He pointed out that they decided to declare a pandemic when there were 82 cases globally, because the amount of data that they had collected within a week of their first meeting about it, their first emergency grouping meeting about it, and their declaration, they saw enough data, they saw enough experience. They actually were in China at the height of this crisis in January, and they were like, okay, if this becomes a globalized virus, it is going to be significant. So we're going to declare an emergency now, and everybody vessel up, make sure you work accordingly. So what some countries like New Zealand, like Germany, and the rest did, they looked at that data. They didn't say if it comes here. They said when it comes here. So they made the decision early, and they decided it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. How will we be able to address this given our capacities and what we have currently? So saying, if you're over a certain age, this is why we are asking you to shelter at home. If you're under a certain age, this is why. That allows you to not impact your economics that everybody's worried about as much, but also minimize the amount of burden. Because one of the things that I have been almost on a campaign about lately is that only having one piece of information or another will not let you really understand the full picture. For instance, when you just have mortality data, like oftentimes you get it, how many people have died with COVID-related illness, you're getting how virulent the disease is. But understanding how many people are sick gives you what the likelihood is of overwhelming your whole hospital system. So, for instance, if you have in the US, right, currently, we have about 1.4 million, 1.5 million cases. Those are tested cases. That's just the full number of cases. That's not the same number of deaths. The number of deaths is about, I want to say it's 65,000, somewhere around there, across the country. So if you look at the number, you're like, wow, that's a lot, that's lower. But these are still really large numbers. And that's very true. But part of the reason why they're so large and it's such a cluster is that we kind of reacted late and we didn't have part of the reason we had a global pandemic team in the executive branch to begin with for the past 6 years is it's not our first pandemic in the last decade. It's actually the second. H1N1 was a pandemic. And that, the lessons that we learn from those, we hope take those moving forward. I think countries like New Zealand did. So in H1N1, they didn't have a plan. They didn't know what they were like. Okay, we'll just figure it out, and it was painful. So this time they were ready, just like with China itself. When SARS came out in 2003, they were not as quick to respond. They were very much overwhelmed and very much unprepared for how quickly the original coronavirus that it's like a super coronavirus. I don't know what to do. How quickly that was able to spread and the amount of illness that it impacted on their society. This time, they were very quick to respond. They were very quick to, at least within their borders, make sure that they had national testing, things like that, which we don't have, which I'm pretty sure in a place like New Zealand that is much smaller, they are more able to do. So, but I'm also an epi, right? And one of the things that EPIs and most public health people have figured out is that we usually don't get all the information as we would like it. We usually get what we can and not necessarily what we'd like. So one of the things that I have been asking for and asking about is flu testing, because the flu and COVID-19 look very similar, except for maybe a couple things like the cough and some of the other outlying things that tend to be more severe with COVID-19. So when most people focus on the testing of COVID-19, you ask the question of, okay, well, did you do a flu test at the same time? And I get varying responses, but essentially, if you can't test for one because you don't have the capacity, at least test for the other so that you can rule it out. And that is a hallmark of, investigative epidemiology. You have to. You're not going to always have the tools that you like. Sometimes you have to MacGyver
it. Yeah. That sounds like a ready team of individuals that should have been in preparation in the office would have been able to handle all of that precisely. We only have a couple of minutes left, but let me get you this question here. So, can we find the origins of this, or is that even important? Like, is it important with all of this stuff? Is it important to know where this came from?
I think in the long run it'll be important. Like I think we will be studying this for a long time to come. They're still publishing stuff on SARS literally last year. So this is not something that will go away, especially given the footprint that it has had across the globe. I don't think we're going to forget about this anytime soon. So in the immediate future, I don't really think knowing where it came from is as important as figuring out how to mitigate the symptoms and how to protect people as much as possible. I would be much happier with understanding how it's transmitted and what the path for that is, more than where it came from, because that's not as productive for me. I would rather be able to say, yeah, wash your hands, but you don't necessarily have to cover your mouth if you haven't been in these areas with these people in the past 2 weeks, something like that. Because it's kind of one of those things of, you're going to find out where it came from eventually. We're pretty good about those kinds of things. The issue is, what do we do now that it's out? And going from there.
Thank you so much for your information. I feel like I've learned already way too much information. And I want to get into my own study. I'm the armchair epidemiologist. I know you me, but I don't be claiming that. I don't be going around dishing it out. But is this something that, and you mentioned the other pandemics and the other diseases, is this something that really needed an actual shutdown, or is this something that really just kind of needs to play itself out? I know there's a lot of people that ask that question about what lives really matter. The lives that if we just have done nothing and we just let it be, we'll see that might not have been your way, their way, but there was somebody else's way. I mean, that's what happened in some of those other countries. Do you think that the steps that we're taking are progressive enough so that we can slow things down here in the valley and here in Mexico?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one. I don't envy anybody in these positions because it is very difficult to determine. Even the World Health Organization said, sometimes we're accused of responding too late, and sometimes we're accused of responding too early. Like we're trying to do that balance. I think that once we hit a point where it became evident that there was not enough testing to really determine the underlying population, what we call the denominator, the number of people who actually are positive, and the fact that we probably won't get anywhere near that number. Once we got to that point and determining that, and all the issues we had around the test itself, that's probably when, we need to think about our social distancing and doing some more protective. And since this is what I like to call a living pandemic, meaning that the information changes daily.
Yes.
As more information came to the Centers for Disease Control and the NIH, the National Institutes for Health, they realized that they needed to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I knew that. That was my thing. I was teaching that. I knew that. And now we have this situation. You know what? We got to roll real quick, but you can stick around with us for our after show. I'm going to have to make sure I say goodbye to my fans and all sorts of listeners and watchers here. Soul Star Live is a production of Desert Soul Media. Our executive producer is Kaja Brown. I'm your host, Calvin Wood. You can follow me on Instagram, Calvin J. Wood _ Big Calvin. And make sure you go check out our archives at soulstarlive.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week.
Okay, just give me a second.
All right. I wanted to ask about PPE. The importance of PPE. Thank you so much. Tuning in, checking out the show, Soul Star Live. Sundays, 5 p.m. to 6, Radio Phoenix, right here on this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for checking us out. Have a great week. Good night.